Hey guys, welcome back to another edition of the Cover One Buffalo podcast, post-game edition. It's me, Aaron Quinn, here with my lovely friend Greg Thompson. How you doing tonight, my man? To another edition of the Cover One Buffalo podcast, post-game edition.
What's going on, guys? How's everybody doing tonight?
Well, it's another time we're coming in here. A lot of losses this year, and it's hard to do these shows after losses, as everybody knows. This one, no different than the rest of the losses this year. So we're here for you, the fans. So hop on in the chat. Then we're back over here on YouTube tonight. We tried the Spreaker thing for a while, but the people have spoke, especially here for the post game show. People wanted it on YouTube, so we like to give the people what they want. And so here we are back on YouTube, so you can see our beautiful faces. I'm guessing the only reason you want it back on YouTube is to stare at us for 45 minutes to an hour while we talk about how bad our team is. Well, it looks like I may have lost Greg here for a minute. So we'll get right into today's game. Looks like we had the Bills losing to the Jets 27-23. I was at the game. I attended the game, and it was not any better live than it was on your TV stations, guys. So if you guys have any questions, get them in while we're waiting for Greg to get back. I'll take a minute here to tell you a little bit about Cover One and what we're doing over at Cover One and why you should be excited, especially as the season comes to a close here. So cover1.net is your premier spot to go for everything you need to analyze the Bills and draft prospects. And we have a couple other teams that they cover over at cover1.net. So head over there, check out all the stuff we're doing. Eric is maybe the best in the business when it comes to breaking down football analysis, whether it's the Bills or other teams, draft prospects, etc. So get over there, make sure that you follow, like, and subscribe all of our social media networks. While you're over here on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit that little bell that gives you the notifications so that when we go live, you get notified on your phone or whatever device you're using that we're live and you can come hang out with us for a little bit. As we roll into the offseason, the content's only going to ramp up more as we get prepared for the Bills draft. 2019 offseason here is going to be a big year for the Bills, and Cover One's going to be your spot for all that you need to know for any prospects and free agents that are going to help fill the needs on this team to take them to the next level. So head on over there. Make sure when you're over there, check out the premium subscription page. You really can't beat the premium subscription page. Now that Greg's back, he can tell you a little bit about the benefits of being a premium member. He was a premium member before he joined the show here. So he's not only a member of Cover One, but he's also a client.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic, and days like today really make it worthwhile. A really frustrating win. We just went at it in the premium Slack over what was good enough for today, and it's exciting to have healthy discussions like that, and not simply having it devolve into a horrible team that's everything's going wrong, that we actually do have standards and we do have expectations of the team, and that's different than where we had been. So although it's not easy when everybody's frustrated and trying to figure out where to point their frustration, it's nice to have a group of people who are informed on where the Bills are going and what they're looking for, and that we can all kind of focus on where to go next.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, like I said, head over to cover1.net. You can join the premium subscription. You get access to the Slack channel, access to the film room, special film room that we do. We do a lot of coverage for the draft. So as we're ramping up to the draft, people like to join right before the season starts. But, it gets even better here as we ramp up into the off season, because Eric's going to be breaking down everybody. He doesn't just have to focus on game day stuff. He's going to be breaking down everything you need to know about who the Bills are going to go get. So enough of that stuff for now here. Greg, you cut out for a little bit here, but kind of before we hop into the specifics of the game, I know I was telling the people here I got to enjoy the game live, but I don't think that the enjoyment level was much different than you watching on your TV. What was your overall feelings of the game today?
Yeah, I know Jabo in the premium Slack had brought up that it was weird in that today actually hurt, because it was one of the first games in a while that I actually expected us to win. I don't know that I had really had that feeling all season. There were definitely games where I thought we could win. There were games where I felt like we had a pretty good chance. I don't know if there were any of the previous 12 games where I went into it and I genuinely expected that we were going to win. So having that today, and then to be relatively in control of that for sure for three quarters, and then late into the fourth quarter, I know Garrison had brought up in the premium Slack, I think where his frustration came from was with 5 minutes left, we had a lead, and that we usually feel like that's a win. That's a good spot for us where we should be able to hold on to that. So I think the hard part was it felt like we were going to win going into it, and then I thought we were going to win during it, and then having it all taken away made it hurt more than some of the other losses.
Yeah, being at the game, that first quarter felt fantastic. Being up 14-3, they came out and they kind of imposed their will. We saw some creative play calling from Dable again, which got me really excited. I thought, it's been very few times that I've been at the stadium where we really dominated a team and pulled out with a win. I felt like maybe that was going to be the vibe for the day. Unfortunately, the end result was more what I'm used to when I go to a new airfield, which is a heartbreaking loss. And that's where we ended up. But the thing is, man, and we'll get obviously into the specifics of this, I really felt even after they kind of got it close there in the second quarter, I really felt that the Bills were dominating the game and just allowing the Jets to hang in. And we kind of got into the discussion in the Slack channel a little bit, but I feel like they really should have dominated this game, and it shouldn't have even been close. And I really still I'm befuddled that the Jets were able to come away with the win, because I thought the Bills did almost everything other than the special teams unit. And obviously it takes the 3 units, but I thought they did everything you can really do to beat another mediocre team. Obviously you have 2 mediocre teams going up against each other, so it's not going to always be pretty, but I thought they really did enough on the 2 major units to get away with a win. And somehow New York leaves, or the Jets leave New York with a win.
Yeah, we'll run down it as we get into greater detail, but there aren't going to be a lot of games where the Bills have more first downs across every function, more passing, more rushing, more penalty first downs, better third down efficiency, ran more plays, gained more yards, had within 1 a turnover. They did have more turnovers, 3-2, had the same amount of penalties for fewer yards, controlled the time of possession. Everything except for special teams was relatively in their favor. And that, we didn't get a lot of big plays going our way. So that obviously came back, and that several opportunities that were there where we could have made a play here or could have not made a mistake there obviously add up in a 1 possession loss like this. But it was a tough one. And certainly, honestly, a lot of guys in the premium Slack had that mindset that, maybe this is healthy, that they needed some humble pie and to have a chance to go back and look at this in the game we should have won. This should be a great game for McDermott on the telestrator and going through the game film, because it's going to be a lot of humble pie served up.
Yeah, no, definitely. And we'll serve up our own little version of our humble pie here with our series Grunted and Disgruntled, something we do every week. Greg didn't feel like the word gruntled got used enough on a weekly basis. I think he uses it a lot more than most people, and he wanted to bring it to the people here. So we do a Grunted, Disgruntled, players of the game, and the least valuable player of the game, I guess, or moment of the game. So give me your Gruntled, in the loss.
It's kind of tough in a game that wasn't pretty. I think that obviously the highlights of the game probably go to Josh and the couple big plays that he made, but I'm actually going to go a little bit out of the box. Mine's going to go to Foster. And that I think the Robert Foster and the fact, an undrafted free agent coming back, getting there right up there at the top of the team in targets. We'll get to our disgruntled in a moment for the person who led the team in targets. But 7 catches for 104 yards. This was his most complete game as a Bill. He obviously has had multiple 100-yard games, another 90-some-yard game. But it's all been on catching that big bomb and then taking it for a long chunk of yardage. So it's been a lot of 2 catches for 100 yards, 3 catches for 100 yards. Getting 7 catches with multiple solid plays helped picked up a lot of nice first downs. I think that it's really exciting to see that I now feel like he can be a part of this roster next year. I don't know if I look forward to him being more than a, 4th or 5th receiver, but I look forward to him being on the roster, and I think he earned my player of the game and my Gruntled.
I don't think it's that far out of the box, because I was right there with you, and kind of a him and Isaiah McKenzie combo of those guys being guys that weren't on the team to start. Well, Robert Foster was part of the team to start the year, got cut, came back. But that undrafted free agent, like you said, to have any type of production like he's doing, multiple 100-yard games this season. And like you said, it wasn't on a big play as much as I wanted to see a bomb in person. We just didn't get it today. But he was able to do some things that I didn't see him do in the preseason that concerned me. I saw all the speed and the idea of the talent that he possessed, but what I didn't see was his ability to come back and track a ball, his ability to adjust to make a catch. I just didn't see those things that receivers need to do. You can't just be a one-trick pony in this league and just run down the seam and hope to beat guys every time, because the league's just too complicated for that type of guy to have that in any success, especially if the guy's going to be your fourth wide receiver. So he's shown me a lot, and obviously he's becoming a reliable target for Josh Allen, which is fantastic. I also think that he's carving out a nice spot for himself going into next year, and we've mentioned it on the show before. That's only a benefit to the Bills if they can secure, if they don't have to get 4 wide receivers and just 3 or whatever the number has to be, if they can eliminate one of those guys, because it's going to be a full offseason and a big lift to replace the skill positions at this team to give Josh Allen the weapons he needs. So any help they can get in doing that is big. So he definitely gets my gruntled for the game. I'm going to take the lead here on the disgruntled because I'm dying mad at the special teams unit and Danny Crossman. And this one guy, I was at the game, this one guy comes back after one of the the Jets start off at the Bills 48 or something like that on one of the drives, and he's like, "Well, I just came back. How'd they start off like that?" And I was like, "Specialty, like Danny Crossman's unit, we're just giving them up." So they really killed the team in this game, and it's been going on consistently. This isn't something that just popped up all of a sudden. It totally changed the outcome of the game. It totally changed the way they had to play the game, and I've never seen special teams be such a hindrance to any football team. Can you guys imagine if this team was in the hunt really for playoffs and the special teams were playing this poorly and losing games for people, how the outrage that we would have? Just because they're a bad team doesn't mean that we should be able to accept such a poor performance from a unit as a whole for the whole season plus that he's been here. And I said it on Twitter, and I'll say it right here. Sean McDermott preaches this standard. He's been selling us this standard since he got here, saying we need to play to the standard. The Bills are all about this standard, and players have been released for not maintaining the standard. And I think that the same standard he takes for the players needs to be taken for the coaches. And I think that he needs to set an example of Danny Crossman, and that the standard is not acceptable. This type of play is not acceptable. We're going to relieve this man of his duties because he has not been able to put an acceptable unit on the field that leads to the standards that the Bills are trying to attain. And any players that can't follow and live up to the standard, you guys aren't going to be here. I think that needs to be something that he really takes a step forward and sets up. I'm done with my rant for now. Where's your disgruntled?
I mean, I'm going to mention someone else just on principle, but you're spot on. You cannot lay this at the feet of anyone else. There were enough gaps across the board on the kickoff coverage units, the punt coverage units. We got no positive returns. The misalignment. So in total, you have to lay that at the feet of Danny Crossman. I know some people had brought up some of the decisions there, just where does that fall? But it obviously was the worst special teams game we've seen in a while. Some folks in the premium chat, and again here in the YouTube chat, wondered, did waiving Andre Holmes have any impact? My immediate thought is, well, no, he's just one player, but that's probably naive to think that our top gunner and one of our better coverage guys being gone midweek didn't have some impact on things, and that, I don't know that that's a sole reason, but yeah, in hindsight, maybe that was more of an impact than what they anticipated. So,
but if it was just one game, sure. I would do that. Obviously, the return, the coverage unit was particularly bad in this game, but the special teams issues have been many, and they've been long standing. So yeah, maybe Holmes had an impact on this particular game, but as far as the body of work that Danny Crossman has presented, is clear as day that he is not cut out for the job for this team to live up to the standard.
I agree, and it's more so that I don't want to just dismiss that idea, because honestly, I think that there probably was some incremental impact of not having Andre Holmes there and throwing some younger guys into a role that they hadn't been in before. But agreed that it's certainly not the sole reason, and that we had plenty of opportunity there to be able to see a worse performance than before, but a repeated poor performance. I am going to give just a minor note that we'll talk about on the offense is Zay Jones. Some really critical drops today after his best career game last week. I don't know if there was maybe some maybe some tightness there with his best career game, them releasing Kelvin Benjamin, and kind of a tacit promotion of him to wide receiver one, and that maybe he was pressing or pressured himself a little bit. But 9 targets with 3 catches and at least 3 drops. I'll be surprised if there's not a higher crediting, but at least 3 of them should be credited as straight drops. 3 catches for 22 yards, and those 3 drops, 2 of them were on critical third downs. So just a really rough game for Zay, but nowhere near where Danny Crossman is, but he doesn't deserve not to at least get a mention here in the disgruntled.
Yeah, no, for sure. So let's flip over to this offensive side of the ball, because I think we saw the same things we saw from Josh Allen that we've seen over the past couple of weeks since he's been back. Of a lot of running the football, a lot of nice throws that he's making, still some hitting the ground, things that are off target, missing guys that he should be hitting. Typical things I think that we would all expect out of Josh Allen from what we saw coming out of college. But I think we're still seeing that he is definitely a guy that can play in this league, definitely a guy that I believe if you put the weapons around him, he might be able to do some of the special things and get closer to that ceiling that draft scouts fell in love with about him. What did you see out of this game that intrigued you or discouraged you right now about Josh Allen?
I'll say on the poor side, obviously we saw a handful of the boneheaded turnovers that you can't have. And I separate the 2 turnovers. The one was, not in a crucial situation, about to go out of bounds, trying to avoid a sack, thought that he saw Zay Jones flash open for a second and he could just muscle the ball in there, and threw a terrible crossbody pass that got picked off, almost identical to the Green Bay situation where he had the defender dragging him down and then tried to come back and threw crossbody. Sam Darnold, oddly enough, came back and did the exact same thing a drive or 2 later. So there was that. Later on, I think when you're down, no timeouts, 1:17 left, trying to force something in there to make a play, that's disappointing. But I don't know that I immediately think that was some horrible interception. It was a shame, but he's trying to get something done to get us back in that game. Those are going to happen. Yep. Again, you had some of the, short plays thrown at receivers' feet. You had a couple of the, just inaccurate passes that were avoidable. But really today, I thought he was much more accurate. I thought that we saw several passes that were very catchable. I think that I saw the official total as 6 credited drops. 6 drops in one game is huge. And again, I believe 4 of those were on third downs that would have converted, 3 of them by Zay Jones. So the really impressive part to me was his progression on third down. He had 5 third down conversions via pass and 6 completions. Actually had one that was just short of that. So 6 of 9 on third down. 3 of those were drops and the other one was a completion, which means that 9 of 9 on third down were on target and giving his guy a chance to convert. That is something we have not seen. That is something that we have not had the consistent approach of. And if we're getting that kind of opportunity and you start to put some better offensive linemen in front of him and some better receivers who can, not drop the ball, then we're really talking about something. So my biggest positive takeaway for Allen today was his best game on third down by far, although it was hidden amidst a pretty good amount of poor throws as well.
Yeah, and so I totally agree with you on the third down thing, because when I was there for years, if it's been more than 3rd and 6, I felt like the Bills were punting. Just for years, it's been they can't. If it's not like a 3rd and 2, they're not picking it up. With Allen, I feel so much more comfortable on a 3rd and 6, 3rd and 8 that he can pick it up either with his legs or with his arm, and he showed some of that today. I liked some of the ability to make quick, decisive throws. I saw a couple, quick outs where he just got the ball out, target to his guy, That's stuff. Our NFL throws, again, it sounds really simple, but it's stuff that we just haven't seen here in Buffalo, where a guy can get the ball out on target quickly and decisively to his target on the outside hash. Just hasn't happened in years. So to be able to see that's nice. But we did see some of the bad stuff. The one area I felt like he really regressed today, and you kind of mentioned it on the hero ball thing, is the throwing the ball away. We saw him doing it a lot over the past couple of weeks and making those smart decisions. He still did it a couple times, but in some of the crucial areas where he should have just taken, there's no play to be made and just get out of the play, he didn't do that. But some of the time with Josh Allen and a lot of quarterbacks with the type of confidence and physical traits that a Josh Allen has, you see it around the league, even with really good quarterbacks, that throw across his body, that same confidence that gives him the I'm going to throw this and I can make this throw is the same confidence when he takes off and runs. He thinks he can get 30, 40 yards. That same confidence that, allows him to do some of the other special things that we see him do. So with that type of confidence and a young guy who thinks he can jump over walls and run through walls, you're going to get some of the plays where we as fans see it happen and we're like, oh, it's not there. And that's a terrible idea. In his mind, he thinks he can make all those plays, and at some point he's going to have to pull it back. But that is the Josh Allen experience, and with a young guy with a ton of confidence, you're going to get him making some of these throws that just we cringe when we see it. But you got to take the good with the bad. If you're going to get the really impressive plays that his confidence allows him to do, you're going to get some of those too.
Yeah, I think the technical term for that is the no-go.
Yeah.
No, go. Yeah, it's always funny when you have a guy with his talent. I was talking about that on the fumble, and that fans were immediately starting to go nuts and trying to give him a hard time. I said, listen, you can't celebrate him running and stiff arming guys and putting his shoulder down and then get frustrated that, hey, a guy who doesn't normally carry the ball all the time is out there and fumbled while he was out there actively running the ball. Unfortunately, that's a package deal. Now, it's been fortunate that he's been careful. I think it's a worthwhile lessons learned, and that one of the key humble pie moments he's going to have a specifically painful film session from this game. But I'd rather he learn that now in a late season game in a 4-9 season, so that we can kind of tuck that away, try to learn from it and move forward and avoid it from happening again. Yep. So, it is what it is. I had some people trying to say they thought it was his worst game. I think people have a very short memory of how ugly some of those early season Chargers and Packers and some of those games were really rough. So it wasn't his best game, but there were definitely some needed improvements. But Josh Allen played reasonable today, and we'll learn from some of the negative things and hopefully start to harness it or hone in and harness those positive things and see him more often.
Yeah, it wasn't his best game. You're right. It was far from his worst game. And he was still the best offensive player on the Bills today. And he was the one that put them in position to score points and in position to possibly win this game, even though it ended with a Josh Allen interception. But let's not fool ourselves. He was the only guy in the first half that was really creating offense for this team. So I'm not going to go and say it was his worst game. Also, I saw a huge difference in Josh Allen in the second half. After that trick play where Zay Jones threw him the ball, he went up to get it. He came up with a slight limp. He ran over to the bench limping. It looked like someone was looking at him. I don't know if anything official came out, maybe like a tweaked ankle. Something was up. You saw him kind of come up gimpy a few times after that throughout the game. So you didn't see him take off and run as much in the second half. You didn't see him making some of the explosive plays that he's been trying to make. So I don't know if something was up there. I'm not trying to make excuses for him, but he looked like a different guy in the second half. The whole unit did. But the offensive line's not doing him any favors. And I want to, before we jump into the skill positions a little bit, man, this offensive line is up there with the special teams for me at this point, because they're single-handedly losing games this year, and something's got to change. Again, I don't want to overreact and say let's clear out the staff or anything like that, but Castillo's been here long enough and had the guys in place long enough. It's not like we've been hit with a ton of injuries along the offensive line where things are shifting and you can make a bunch of these excuses. Obviously, talent at the positions is a concern, but Eric mentioned it in the Slack channel. I think with good enough coaching, you can offset some of the lack of talent. But unfortunately, right now, I think for the Bills, they both have a lack of talent and a lack of ability to coach the most out of that talent. What do you see going into these last few games? Outside of just drafting the best offensive lineman available and finding guys, what are ways that, is firing Castillo a realistic thing for the Bills? What's this offensive line going to look like? Who's coming back? Because it's not pretty right now.
Yeah, and obviously there's a gap in how much is the lack of talent, how much is the lack of coaching. So what I do put on Castillo is the lack of development in players like John Miller, Jordan Mills, Russell Bodine. I don't know that we've seen tremendous development from Wyatt Teller. So I know that Nick Lowe brought it up in the chat here. Josh Allen was pressured on more than half of his throws today. That is not a sustainable model in today's NFL. That's just not going to work. I know that Josh is a really, underrated athlete. He's obviously broke records for 3 straight rushing yards games, over 90 and over 95 yards in each game. That's great. And I'm happy that he has that skill set. I would love for that not to be his mode of survival and the only chance he has to make it through a game, because he has to take off. So from a development standpoint, I know I heard some people saying that, he's just tucking it and running too soon. No, he's trying to survive. He's trying to simply make it through the game, with all his pieces still attached. So when you have an offensive line that's giving up that much pressure that consistently right in his face, his only option is to try to turn and run and try to get him to create some space. So I think Dable has tried to do some things to patch that and move the pocket to give him a chance. But I have, to your question, I have to assume that without seeing the development that we need, that we do need to look for a new offensive line coach, and that obviously a piece of that is not on Castillo, that we do not have an overly talented offensive line. I think you can very reasonably make the case that we need 4 new offensive linemen and possibly a position change from Deion Dawkins. But I will say that I think that there's an opportunity for some development. Maybe we get something out of Teller over these last 3 games, or he shows some development with an offseason of NFL position coaching, nutrition, fitness, things like that. Hopefully having some better play next to Dawkins will solidify more to what we saw last year, to be able to allow, obviously he played better with people like Incognito and Wood next to him. So I think that's something fair to look at. So I would love to be able to see more, but realistically, I think we need a minimum of 3, possibly 4 new starters next year, and that's a lot to ask. So I was kind of bracing some of our folks in the premium Slack channel. This may not be a 1-year rebuild. I don't think it's crazy that you could see them. What if they draft somebody else in the first round and they draft a second-round offensive tackle? Maybe they bring back Jordan Mills as kind of a bridge until that second round is ready.
Now,
or the same thing at guard. I'd love to see them go sign starting caliber players at center, guard, and tackle. That doesn't frequently happen in the NFL in one offseason. So there is a possibility that at one of those spots, whether it via draft and free agency, we don't see an upgrade, and that it might be another year with Bodine, another year with Miller, or another year with Mills. I do think we see 2 of them replaced, and I would love to see 3. Hell, I'd take 4 if we got an upgrade over Teller. I just want to brace people that it's not that frequent that we see that level of turnover and upgrade across the line all in one offseason. So we'll see where it goes, but I think that we need it. And going into the starting game of 2020, I think we should see a new offensive line coach and 4 starters beyond Deion Dawkins. And in my mind, our franchise left tackle will come in the draft and Dawkins will move to right tackle.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I think my biggest concern right now with the offensive line this season is I thought it would be a much better running team. I thought John Miller, the way he looked this summer, would really add to that unit in the run game, and that hasn't been there at all. I know people have been super frustrated with LaShawn McCoy this year, and I keep heard it in the stadium today. I've heard it in chats. I've heard it on Twitter about people are getting sick of his dancing, which is shocking to me how quickly people have turned on LeSean McCoy from being a guy that he's our guy, he's a stud. McCoy hasn't changed. He hasn't changed how he makes his business and what he does in the league. What's changed is there is nothing there. And you saw it today when McCoy went out, there still wasn't anything there. Ivory got some yardage, but there still wasn't much there. Murphy wasn't able to do anything. We can only really run with Josh Allen, and then that's a totally different type of running game. You're not dependent on the offensive line. So it's an offensive line problem. It's not a LeSean McCoy problem. It's not a problem of the skill positions at running back. It's without a doubt the offensive line. And I could live a little bit with, hey, they're not so good in pass protection, but they're really good at run blocking. We can get something going on the ground. But being really bad at both just is totally unacceptable. But I agree with you. It's not going to happen overnight. Not with we just talked about the wide receiver room. We could need 3 wide receivers next year. You're not going to get in one offseason 3 starting 2 to 3 starting wide receivers, 4 starting offensive linemen, a starting cornerback, number 2. You're not going to get all those things in one offseason. So I do think people need to buckle up. I hate to say it. I do think people need to trust the process a little bit and let this thing ride out, because I do think it is a 2019-2020 full-on rebuild just with the amount of holes that are on this team.
Yeah, and again, we got 10 draft picks, but there's only so many top level ones. We have a lot of money in free agency, but they're not going to spend every penny, and there is going to be some carryover into 2020. So we are going to fill a lot of holes. There's going to be a lot of improvement, but it's not going to be fixing every single open spot with a name brand, no doubt about it, starter. There's going to be some leaps of faith coming in our future.
Yeah, so with the offense, we talked a little bit about skill positions. Obviously, we both talked about Robert Foster. Was there anything else here on the offensive side of the ball that you wanted to discuss before we flip the script?
No, we can flip over. I will say real quick, I do think that this showed that I don't think LeSean McCoy is the problem. We didn't see a lot of movement for Chris Ivory. He did have his normal 2 or 3 good hard-nosed runs, but if you take out that 1 15-yarder, he had 11 carries for 27 yards. That's the exact same game that LeSean McCoy has been having. 12 carries for 42 yards is the game we're mad at LeSean McCoy for. So, I think this is way more offensive line than it is lack of talent at the running back position. So I still want, maybe one of those 4th round picks or something to be a nice young running back who can come in and contribute. But I expect LeSean McCoy to be here next year, and I won't be shocked if Chris Ivory is back, although he is one that has a decent cap number there at $3 million. You can move on from him at only $750 in dead cap. So he is a possible cap casualty.
Yeah, and I guess my one final thought here on the offense is there's a contingent of Bills fans that don't like Brian Daboll, don't think that he's a suitable coordinator in this league. He's getting a lot of the brunt of the frustration of this offense, and I think that it's unjust. I'm not going to sit here and say he's the best offensive coordinator the Bills have ever had, but I think he's working with a pretty poor unit talent-wise when you stack up across the NFL and you start looking at other offenses. But he's still calling creative play calls. He's not bringing out vanilla stuff. Today, would I've liked to seen some shots downfield? Sure, but the pressures were there. I think they probably had some stuff drawn up 4 shots downfield and just didn't work out. But I think he's been calling good games. I think it just is a matter of a lack of talent. So I want to just be on record that Daboll, I do not think is the problem that the fans that are against him seem to think that he is. I don't think he's as bad as people think he is, and he might not be as good as some people think he is, but I think he's a very serviceable offensive coordinator. I think it would be a huge mistake to have a 3rd offensive coordinator in Sean McDermott's 3 years, have one every year. I think that's a huge mistake. It's too much transition. I think he at least needs to be the guy next year.
Yeah. We'll see where that goes. But yeah, let's move on to defense.
Yeah, so defense, man, I actually thought, outside of not getting a lot of pressures on the quarterback, I thought the defense put this team in a position to win. I think their backs were against the wall with the special teams giving up huge stuff in the coverage game. I thought that they did enough to win, but here you're looking up, they put up 27 points on them. So what happened? How was a not very good New York Jets offense able to put up 27 points on us?
Yeah, this is the crux of the debate and argument we had in the freaking premium channel Slack. It's tough, when the timing is where it is. They were put in terrible situations. They gave up a 1-play 8-yard scoring drive.
Yeah.
They gave up a 3-play 4-yard scoring drive. They were constantly put in bad situations. The turnovers weren't in great position. But I will say, there were some clutch situations where I thought they were going to make a play and they didn't. And for a team that we've come to depend on them, and plenty of fans like to tout it that, hey, we have the number one defense in the NFL, or the number one pass defense, or one of the better defenses in the NFL. We needed them to make a play and not give up 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
So regardless of whether they played good enough to win, and I think when you show that, hey, as a whole, it's hard to argue against the idea that giving up 248 yards isn't enough to win. They didn't make plays in the critical moments when it was needed. So it's frustrating that, that kind of thing happens. I think overall, we haven't gotten to it yet, but the biggest impact today was the gruesome injury by Matt Milano. He's really probably been the defensive MVP this year in many people's eyes, and, flying all over the field, making plays, 6 turnovers already, and just a phenomenal season. And for anyone who didn't see it, literally had his foot about turned around backwards. Some of the injury specialists we see on Twitter, Dr. Chow and Kyle Trimble over at Banged Up Bills, both said it pretty clearly looked like a severe dislocation and or fracture of the ankle. Very likely will require surgery to get it fixed. But they did both say that this is a definitely recoverable injury. He's young. It's he has a whole offseason for it and should not impact him going into 2019 unless there's something unforeseen. So definitely a shame, and someone that I know you and I both love deeply, and it has been a very exciting player to monitor. But that certainly took away a lot of my attention on the defensive side of the ball because such a ridiculous impact.
Yeah, it was terrible. I knew it was serious the second he went down and he tossed his helmet. You could just see the pain. Didn't know it was serious until right here before we got online. You told me what Kyle Trimble, who is a guy I respect. And if you're not following him over there on Banged Up Bills, it's a disservice to you. Definitely go and follow Kyle for all your injury news. But when you said what he said, that's terrible news for this Bills team because the depth at that position isn't something I'm interested in getting a look at. I don't think any of those guys are guys that I really particularly care whether or not they're on the team next year. I don't love the depth. I don't need to take a look at those guys where, I don't like to say when a guy gets hurt, I'm interested to see what's behind him. But like Jordan Mills went down, I was kind of, let's see what this McDermott kid's got and see what we can get there. I'm not there with Milano at all. I want to see him get as much reps next to Tremaine Edmonds as possible. So that's a huge loss. And the thing that we talk about the most, which is this last few games are all about development of the young talent. He's part of that young core. So huge loss for him this season and for the unit itself.
For anyone who didn't see that tweet that we referenced, Kyle had mentioned his comparison was to Travaris Cadet last year. I know recency bias, a lot of people's minds are going to go to Alex Smith, and I know Ark Oman brought it up in the chat here. That is a little bit different. That anytime you hear a radial fracture, that means instead of it snapping in half like you would snap like a chopstick, it broke because it twisted. And think about, a piece of wood or a chopstick that you twisted, and that's why it broke.
Right?
Yeah, that's very dangerous, and why there's potential for infection and potential career impacting injury. So we won't know until they get in there and take a look at it. Everyone who's looked at it has said it looks like it will require surgery and something pretty serious. So we don't want to make light of it or speculate. We'll wait for the reports to come out. Either way, it is a serious injury and something that very, very obviously ends his season. And we just hope that it allows him to bounce back 100% next year.
Yeah, definitely. And to your point about plays being made, one of the specific plays that stands out in my mind is I think Levi Wallace had a pick 6 that Darnold just threw right in his lap. He missed that. Trey looked like he could have got his hands on a few balls that ended up being big plays, specifically the one where Darnold broke down the play. Kyle Williams almost had him sacked dead to rights in the backfield. He somehow escapes that, goes around and throws the touchdown. definitely a hard play for your defense to your defensive backs to hold guys for that long. But, you know, a guy like Trey, who I've been pumping up to be an all-pro consideration, he's right there to make a play and just doesn't get a hand in there. So it just seemed like where throughout the season they've been able to get hands in on balls, tips and passes up, that type of thing went away. And that's, you know, when you rely on turnovers, that's kind of the crux, is sometimes if you don't get your hand in and don't get the ball up in the air, you're not going to make those plays and they're going to go the other way. And I think that's what ended up happening today. But overall, I was not impressed with what the Jets did on offense up until, you know, there was that one throw from Darnold on the rollout play where he gets a touchdown, and then the throw to Robbie Anderson on the final drive was a beautiful dime where he really put it where Trey couldn't really make a play. Outside of that, I didn't see anything impressive from the Jets. It didn't look like they were really moving the ball on us. I think ultimately it came down to special teams and field position made the defense ultimately look worse than they played.
Yeah, I know that we heard some comments from Zoe afterwards that because their game plan was a lot of max protect and a lot of getting the ball up quickly, that they didn't send a lot of blitzes. To be honest, I actually commented on Twitter that I didn't see the first blitz until that one of those final drives in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
So I guess that's just part of the game plan, that you're assuming your back seven is good enough not to let Sam Darnold drive the length of the field on you. And to be honest, the results bear that out. He didn't do that up to that point. But it was telling that in the moments late in that game when we did send pressure and he had to stand in there, he made some impressive throws. And I don't think he looked great. He threw it just as horrendous of a pick as what Allen did. He didn't have a lot of impressive throws until those final two drives. But
there's a couple other picks up for grabs.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely a couple opportunities. Levi Wallace missed a potential pick six on one. So he wasn't great, but in the moment, in the big moments of that, he stepped up. That ball that he dropped over Trey White into Robbie Anderson down the sideline, that is top 100% NFL caliber throw that not a lot of guys can make consistently. And then, I don't put it on Trey for that crazy late game situation where Darnold rolled all the way right. We only sent three guys, so Kyle kind of drove at his feet and missed, and then it left the rest of the linemen to block Hughes. He rolled all the way back the other way. You had to cover somebody for 7 or 8 seconds in that scenario. Sure. No one can do that. So that was a shame that it ended up being a touchdown if somebody couldn't step in front of it, or more realistically, someone couldn't get to Darnold. But I will say, overall, do I think Darnold had a better game than Allen? No, probably not. But in the big moments where it really counted, he made the throws and Allen threw an interception, and that's just the results of the game. You can't take that away. So I will say he made the plays when it mattered, even though I didn't think he looked great overall in the game.
Yeah, I agree. The plays that he needed to make, he made, and he got them. We could talk about the special teams putting him in position to score, but ultimately he was the one that got him in the end zone. So definitely hats off to him for being able to do that in a hostile environment against a good defense. But I agree. The seats that I had, I didn't always have a great look at what the defense was doing, but I did not like the lack of ability to get pressure, whether or not they're blitzing, because even when they blitz, they're still sending 4. Right, majority of the time. It's just a matter of which 4 we talk about all the time. It's not like they're overloading and going to send 6 guys or anything crazy like that. They're sending 4. But even that ability, a guy like Jerry Hughes, and even we've seen it with Kyle Williams and Lorenzo Alexander, I just didn't see it today with some of the stunts that they have been doing throughout the year and being able to get that pressure on them. I just didn't see it today. That was very frustrating because I really anticipated going into this game, if we were able to get some pressure on Darnold, you would be able to force him into some of the same issues that Josh Allen has, which is get him out, playing hero ball, trying to make some of the throws. We saw it. He was on the run through that pick to Edmonds. When he gets going like that, he is prone to make mistakes. I was hoping to see more of that. We didn't get it today. So I know what you're saying with what Zoe was saying, but I think, that comes to some in-game adjustment stuff and not just on the final drive, making those adjustments. I would have liked to have seen those adjustments happen a little bit sooner to dial up some pressure, because I think some opportunities got left on the field by not pressuring Darnold today.
Yeah, it was definitely tough. And, again, just because we don't bring pressure, just like you said, doesn't mean we can have stunts and be able to get to the quarterback anyways. So I think from that sense, from the elevated status we've given this defense, there were certainly some disappointing moments in the game there, even though the overall stats show that they're consistently still a good team, and giving up one big play is not a bad performance overall compared to what some of the other really poor defense you see around the NFL. But it's still frustrating when you have a loss and they had an opportunity to lock it up and win.
Yeah. So on an individual basis, though, what did you see? Was there any guys that stood out? Because it felt to me the unit as a whole did well. I didn't really see any particular individuals really stand out and have a great game on defense. And we've seen that all throughout the year. When the Bills win games, you see a lot of great individual performances. And I didn't see that at my first glance being there today.
Yeah, nothing special. I thought Jordan Poyer looked decent. He was around there and made a couple plays. I will say, I know Nick brought it up here in the chat, and some other guys that have mentioned it. It's really hard with Tremaine Edmonds because he flashes that potential and it looks amazing. And then you have a couple plays where he takes some really poor angles sometimes. I think he assumes he's fast enough to get there. Yeah, he tries to make an arm tackle and doesn't get there. I know there was one on a third down stop that he had the running back out in the flats and didn't bring him down and let him convert for a first down. There was another play, I know that the one Nick brought up in the chat, was at the goal line, that he had a chance to stop McGuire there and not let him into the end zone, or Cannon. I'm not sure which one scored. But, he had a chance to stuff it there, and you need your 6'5", 250-pound linebacker to be able to make that stuff and push him backwards, not to fall into the end zone with him. So I still am very, very high on Tremaine Edmonds' future. I am very, very high on his potential. I think it's going to be amazing in his 5th year of his career when he has all these reps and he's still only 24 years old. It's going to be awesome. But I will say, there's probably been more down than up from what I've seen to this point, and still plenty of room to grow. So again, that's what you expect from a guy who was drafted at 19 and just turned 20 coming into the year, and was literally the youngest player in NFL history today to have an interception, which kind of tells everybody how young he is to do that this late into the season. So he's still a tremendous talent, but someone that I still find myself more frustrated than excited with so far.
Yeah, it's very frustrating, but the potential's there, and I am not as worried about him as I am about some other guys that have performed poorly, because I see, you said at 19 years old, I think he's still got a lot to put on his frame. I think he got thrown into playing middle linebacker as a young kid here. That's a lot of responsibility to put on a guy that didn't really play that in college and wasn't in a system where he had to do a lot of the thinking and calling things out. They just kind of lined up and went. So he's got a lot thrown his way. He's going to put on muscle throughout the offseason. He's a 19-year-old kid. He's going to grow into his frame a little bit more. He's not going to be able to get pushed around once he gets up some more muscle on it. He's a lean dude. So as soon as he starts to build that up, we'll see, I think we'll see him be able to push off blocks and make some of those plays at the goal line. Then I'm not as worried about it. And then I've said it here before, he's got Bobby Babich as his coach, and he's one of the best in the game. He's turned multiple guys into all-pro players, and I think that he's going to be able to do wonders for both Milano and Edmonds moving into the future. So I don't have any concerns. I'm still high on him as well. But yeah, the season as a whole, there's been a lot of frustrating moments. But you know what? In a year of development, get those things on tape. Work on him in the offseason. He has shown the ability to really work on his mistakes. There's just a lot of them that he's making, and a lot of things he's going to have to correct moving forward. But he's in a good position to make those mistakes now and correct them. So somebody asked about cornerback rotation today, who's playing cornerback 2. I saw a lot of Levi Wallace out there, and he didn't do a terrible job at the quarterback number 2 for an undrafted guy. Again, he had a chance at a pick 6 for sure, and I was so excited for him, and he drops in. That's frustrating, but I think overall, for a guy he's an undrafted guy, didn't get a lot of reps in college at Alabama, to come into the league, I think he's held his own. He's not a guy like when Ryan Lewis got in there against the Packers, who was just getting attacked. I haven't seen teams really just attack Levi Wallace for a whole straight 2 quarters. So I think he's done a serviceable job, and that'd be nice if he could be a cornerback 3-4, rotation guy outside of Trey, Taron Johnson and whoever they bring in to be the cornerback number 2. What are you thinking on Levi Wallace right now?
I think it's interesting in similar to the idea of Foster in that I don't want to let myself get overly excited over the idea of lowering our standards because he's better than what we've seen. I think that's probably more likely what it is. I think Wallace has been a pleasant surprise because as an undrafted free agent and how poor Phillip Gaines and Ryan Lewis and others had played, he's been a welcome net positive, but I don't think he's an answer to our future cornerback 2 needs. So I think the idea that he can be a part of this roster, and I know I talked about it last week, that how beneficial it is when you have multiple undrafted free agents who gain a long-term role on the team. It really makes a difference from a overall financial standpoint. So being able to do that, it puts you in a spot where if you have Robert Foster and Eddie Yarborough and Isaiah McKenzie and a guy like Levi Wallace, those are like $1 million coupons each that you get a nice contributing player at the bare minimum contract. So, I think that Levi Wallace has the potential to be that guy and to be there. But in my mind, it's as cornerback 4 and a special teams contributor and a nice guy when you go dime or need a backup. But I still would like to see an upgrade at cornerback 2 definitively. And obviously, Taron Johnson is the future at the nickel cornerback 3 role.
Yeah, but we talked about it on this show a ton of times. I'm going to be super happy. You got to have a lot of those guys in this league because no matter who you bring in at the cornerback 2 position, somebody's going to go down throughout the year. We saw here this year with Johnson. Somebody's going to get hurt at some point. So if you have a guy that's gotten reps here and meaningful reps throughout this year, that was an undrafted guy, like you said, you control his rights and you know that he can come in and not hurt you. I'm not saying he's going to come in and lock anyone down, but a guy that can come in and not hurt you and has experience communicating with Poyer and Hyde, that's a huge plus and a big win for the front office moving forward. And that's the kind of thing, I don't want people to walk away from this podcast and be like, these guys are psychos. They really think Robert Foster and Levi Wallace are the future. It's not about that. It's about building those depth guys that everyone's comfortable with and says, hey, you know what? When we're in a bind and so-and-so's hurt, we can count on a guy like Foster to make the catches and have a rapport with Allen. And we can count on Levi Wallace to come in and not make the mistakes that a lot of your third, fourth cornerbacks tend to make. So those are wins for the front office. Not big wins, but they're wins nonetheless.
Incremental improvement. And like you said, it's a term we don't throw around a lot. They are legitimate NFL caliber depth.
Yeah.
And we don't have a lot of legitimate NFL caliber depth. So that's a positive and something that's great in a competition. And you want to know what? If they don't make the roster next year, that's awesome because that means that we had somebody even better step in. So definitely a positive.
So talking about legitimate NFL caliber depth, that is, I think, a huge issue in the final phase here of the game is that we need more of that because our special teams is so bad. And we talked about it on the show. You've brought up a bunch of times. A lot of the times it's a testament to the talent at the bottom of your roster. And I think we're seeing that week in and week out outside of the mistakes and the knucklehead things that they've been able to do all year long and get away with. And somehow Danny Crossman keeps his job, even though they continue to line up in, illegal formations on special teams, which I didn't even know was possible with the new rules, but they still managed to do it. All those things aside, the talent, it just doesn't seem to be there. And I think that's a testament to the lack of NFL talent depth at the bottom of the roster.
I'll even take it a step further. I think that overall roster depth, and Nick Lowe brought up something I've been, preaching for a while, that $55 million, and technically it's actually now $70 million in dead cap because of how they position Kelvin Benjamin and Andre Holmes. But still, that $55 million in dead cap we came into this season with, that is an enormous impact on not only special teams, but it actually leads to some of the penalty issues that we see, because I actually think that a lot of penalties are the gap in talent where you have guys who their mind is racing. They're not sure what they're supposed to be doing. They're overly worried about all the things they need to do because of the other guys, and they're trying to make up for their lack of physical talent with the other things that are happening. I think that a lot of times that leads to some of the penalties that we have. I think it leads to very poor special teams coverage and availability because we just don't have the talent on that end of it. So I'm hopeful that filling that in and bringing in better depth across the board on offense, defense, better running back depth, better receiver depth, better linebacker depth, that's going to equal better special teams. And those are the guys who play on special teams. And that all of a sudden, I think we're going to see benefits in both directions. And Lord willing, they'll have a new coordinator in charge of special teams to coach them. So hopefully we'll see that. And I think you brought it up early on and brought it up on Twitter. I do think that there's a reasonable chance that interpreting the post-game presser today from McDermott, that we could see Danny Crossman gone this week. And if not, I think it's now greater than likely that he doesn't make it through the offseason.
Yeah, I really hope that it's this week. I want a message to be sent to the coaching staff itself, to the players in that locker room, to the organization as a whole, that it's not just coach speak, that McDermott's a man of his word. And if you're not participating and moving forward to that standard, what was the saying that they came out with the Buffalo News, the Japanese business saying is basically Kaizen progress every week. We're not seeing it from the special teams unit, and Danny Crossman's the guy that's in charge of it. Responsibility is at the top. In every organization I've ever been a part of, responsibility always is up at the top, and that's Danny Crossman. And so I really want to see, I hate to be this guy because I really don't like to pound on the table for people to get fired, but I want to see an example made of Danny Crossman that this isn't acceptable. This isn't the standard that we want. And if you don't live up to the standard, we're not just going to keep dead weight around just to get through the season. I'd like to see him fired this week. And I think that if he doesn't, it's a real dent in my respect for Sean McDermott. I still respect him a lot. I still like him as a coach and trust the process, but it's definitely something that I don't like. I want to see Danny Crossman gone. And this isn't some bitter fan vendetta. I think that, if you talk about this standard, you got to live up to that. And Danny Crossman hasn't. So let's get him out of here. Sean, I want to see it on Monday that we've relieved Danny Crossman of his duties, and I'll have a ton of respect for Sean McDermott.
I will say I'll be really happy with it. It won't. I'll be fine if he's there the last 3 games and then is gone in the offseason, but I would love it if we see him gone now, like you said, to send that message, and I certainly would support that.
Yeah. I'm a pretty drastic guy, though. Come on.
Honestly, I think that, even beyond the emotional fan reaction of things, I think you're right. If we're going to preach about having a standard and doing those things, I think that's a great way to send that message, and I certainly would support
and
it.
Move on. We're willing to move on from players that aren't living up to that standard, and I don't think that coaches should be in a position above players when if you're trying to build a culture and showing the players that these things are acceptable, these things aren't. I think it has to be across the board, players or coaches. So hopefully that'll all resolve itself. Greg, where can the people find you? Where can they interact with you? And what have you got going on?
Absolutely. Come and find me on Twitter. Have a great time following back Bills fans and being able to have intelligent discussion there. You could find me at Greg Thompsett, GregTompsett, and you can always find me in the premium member Slack. We have some great discussion in there, really healthy debate back and forth. And, I always talk about it's kind of getting out of the fray of social media, but we still go at it pretty healthy. And certainly in frustrating days like today was a great example of that, where, we still have strong opinions on what the team should be doing, what's acceptable and what's not. And I think that it's a great opportunity to be able to have those kind of intelligent discussions and be able to connect with people who care about the team, are connected with what we're doing, have a vision of where that direction is going, and isn't just the emotional overreacting fan that is casual and isn't connected to things. It's a great opportunity and something I certainly welcome all of you to be a part of.
Yeah, definitely. And you can find me over at Aaron Quinn 716, commenting on anything that I can get my hands on and giving my very hot takes and opinions all over the place on Twitter. You can also find me in the Slack channel constantly there. So if you become a premium member, you can get involved in that conversation over there. But primarily my social media of choice is Twitter. So you can find me over there. And you can find Greg and I every Wednesday and Sunday. Wednesday, we look ahead at the matchup for the week. And then on Sundays, we look at the post-game show, which you're here for now. As we get into the offseason, we've got a lot of cool content coming your way, guys. So make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel, click the notification bell so that you get notified anytime we go live. Follow everybody on the Cover One team. Head over to, you know how to search on Twitter and all that stuff. So go look up Cover One. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, anywhere where you get your content, because we are only going to ramp up our content. A lot of sites start to take time off as the season comes to an end, but over here at Cover One, we really just ramp things up to get you ready for an off season, because this is going to be a really exciting off season, guys. These next few weeks are going to be tough to get through the rest of this regular season. Obviously, they're officially eliminated from the playoffs, so we're going to sludge through this part here, but there's a lot of optimism and a lot of reason to be excited heading into the spring here for 2019. So stay tuned to Cover One, because we're going to be your top source for everything you need to know about the Bills this offseason. I want to thank everybody for coming out and joining us here on the YouTube feed. If you're listening to the podcast, make sure you head over to YouTube, because it's the chat's always going, and get here for the live show so you can get your questions in, because it's an experience that nobody else really provides for you guys. So come on over. We can't do the show without you guys. We really appreciate you coming out with us, and hopefully next week when we meet you on Sunday, it'll be a little bit of a better outcome and more positives to talk about. So thanks for coming out tonight, guys, and we'll catch you on the next one.